I want you to take a minute and consider that it is less about the what and more about the who. It is less important to focus on what do I need to do and more important to put our attention on who do I have to become. When we start to examine who do I have to become, we're questioning our underlying beliefs that are ultimately shaping the results and the way that we are living our life. And if we're looking to transform, to change, to develop, to grow, to expand, when we start to ask who do I have to become, the to-do, the what, is going to fall in line. Now, today's guest is an expert on that and so many other things. I'd love to welcome to the show Luka Hocevar. He's the founder and owner of Vigor Fitness and Performance, which has been in Renton, Washington, serving the community for over 10 years. The co-founder of Vigor Performance in Slovenia, which has been serving for 13, maybe even 14 plus years now. And he's also the owner of the Vigor Life podcast, which is an incredible one that I highly recommend you subscribe to. And when you're listening to this one today and his, do break out a pen and paper because there are insights, lessons, and so many takeaways that you're going to want to remember. So without further ado, let's get on to this subject of underlying beliefs, telling the truth, and just so much more that Luka is going to share some profound wisdom with right now. Luka, welcome to the show, brother.
What's going on, man? I'm happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here that I have very vibrant colors so that I make sure I keep people's attention. You know what I'm saying?
It's good stuff, man. Keep them involved. Keep them involved. So first thing I want to kick off with, years ago, you did this really, really fascinating video. And it's one that I've personally watched like several times. And I come back to on occasion. And it was just on truth. And it was kind of out of the norm for, you know, personal trainer, fitness guy, entrepreneur guy to go into. But I think it really holds some power when it comes to understanding transformation. So I just love to hear kind of like your insights and thoughts on just the power of being radically authentic and truthful when it comes to a transformational journey.
You know, what's interesting is like, I just had a conversation with one of my coaches that was around like tactics and strategies and how they don't do anything when a certain belief system is in place. You know, and really it was a tough conversation because I said, hey, look, man, like right now, like we're going over all these like inputs. Hey, if you do this here and if you do that there, this will happen. But I was like, at the foundational level, there's something that you believe that will prevent you from getting what you say that you want. Right now, the reason I bring this up is because truth, you know, it's a very overused word, right? Like, oh, I just want the truth and this, that, the other. But like, you have to face your own truth first. I think that's, you know, awareness precedes change. First, you have to be aware of what's going on, you know, and awareness might be like, I'll tell you straight up what it comes down to for majority of people most of the time. Like I'm, you know, without like going around in circles, is that most people, you know, and that means including me, like something I've been battling a lot of my life is like this thing that like is like, I'm not enough, right? That somewhere along the lines of, you know, when you're a kid, those developmental stages, which are so important, right? I mean, you know, so much stuff gets ingrained into your brain and the nervous system when you're younger that you don't even really think about consciously today, right? That, you know, and it's not like parents do things on purpose. And sometimes it can be trauma. Sometimes it can be, you know, a parent leaving. Sometimes it can be being bullied. Sometimes it's like the whole, hey, you're not enough, you know, and it's not a conscious, like parents just do the best that they can. But throughout that process, a lot of times you get this ingrained, I'm not enough, right? And throughout that process, for me, like a lot of life was seeking significance, right? I got to have money. I got to be like this and look like that and have this and perceive myself because then I'll be important, right? And if I'm important, then I'm enough, right? But you're seeking out this external validation. And that can develop in so many different ways. And when it comes to, you know, definitely body transformation and weight loss, you know, there might be for many people, it's a subconscious kind of stream, which is, I'm not safe. I'm not enough. You know, I don't deserve this. And of course, like if somebody doesn't believe that they deserve better or deserve to be in great shape and feel great and be in a great relationship and, you know, fill in the blank, you know, they're going to have destructive behaviors, you know, and it's that thing where it's like, I'm sure you see it all the time. Like, Joseph, I want this. This is what I want, right? And then behaviors are like, boop, yep. Not in line. And you're like, man, what's going on here, right? And the truth ends up, digging deeper, just going like, hey man, why is this going on? Right? Why am I in a consistent, like, destructive relationship? Why am I in a saying that I want to change, but then I don't, or, it's because it's usually an external thing, right? We're trying to feel love, if this person loves me, then I'll love myself, right? External validation, right? If this person thinks that I'm look good and hot and whatever, I'll be validated, and then like I'll feel good about it, right? Versus, hey, like, I feel good about me. I love myself. I am enough. Because that's where it starts, right? Like, and James Clear talks about that identity, right? Who we believe ourselves to be, right? And you cast votes. Your behaviors are votes for who you believe yourself to be. And if you've been casting a vote for a long, long time that, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to treat my body like shit. So I don't exercise. I don't eat well and healthy, to look, perform, feel good. If I don't, I would say, like, treat people well. I mean, those are all, like, obviously parts of, like, you don't treat people well because you don't treat yourself well. And you build up this, essentially what you do is you keep casting these votes for the identity you have, right? Because remember, actions build identity, not just like me saying it. That's why if you say that you want to get in shape, but for years you don't get in shape, it's because there's something about who you believe yourself to be that's holding you back. And so truth is so much around that. Truth is stuff like going like, hey, wow, like, you know what? I do, like, I treat myself like shit. Hey, these people I'm surrounding myself by, they're not helping me get into a better place. That's truth. Might be painful because it might be your best friends. It might be your family. It might be whatever. And that's painful. But the first thing that you have to do to change is face the truth, is face the facts, right? My friend the other day is perfect example, and it'll be, he's, trying to sell a house or whatever, but it comes back, honestly, like, it's very, very similar, right? And he goes, man, like, my house, I should get this much for it. I'm like, what do you mean you should? I was like, it's worth that. I'm like, but you've had it on the market for this many months and nobody's giving you that. You've got lower offers. Yeah, but I should get that. I'm like, no, see, that's your opinion. But the fact is that you're not getting that for it because nobody will pay that for it. Yeah, but I should. I was like, dude, listen, you're dealing with opinions versus facts. Like, you have to factually, like, you have to look at the reality, right? Reality is undefeated. Reality always wins. You know what I mean? You can't argue with reality. And so that is a hard cookie to crack, right? Because it's easier to keep a different narrative around, the reasons why you do stuff. Oh, well, it's not the right time to start on, getting in shape. Well, these people are really making it hard. See, notice, all pointing fingers, all external, instead of going like, I am the reason, right? And that's harsh, right? Like, hey, look, I'm treating myself like shit. I've said it 100 times and I haven't followed through on it, and it's time to stop, right?
Yeah. So it's taking that awareness, but then it's also a little bit like Jocko Willick's, almost like some extreme ownership but meeting yourself in a humble place, not a destructive place.
Yeah. I mean, taking, what is it? I mean, like, taking 100% responsibility for your life, right? So people say, what is, people say, what's one of the most important virtues in life? And I say resilience, right? I think resilience is people don't talk about it enough. But then, somebody says, well, Luka, what is resilience? And there's a lot of different things that we could talk about that resilience could be. But for me, resilience, number one, is taking 100% responsibility of your life.
Yeah.
Right? That's resilience. Going like, hey, you know what? Like, this shit happened. It's on me. Right? Or like Will Smith says, well, Luka, what about when that car hit me and broke my leg? Right? Is that my fault? It's like, no, it's not. It's not your fault. Absolutely not your fault. But it is your responsibility to make that change. Because if you're going to wait for the guy to hit you to fix your leg and your life and your attitude, and only if they, whatever, repent and pay you $1 million or whatever else it is, you'll be happy, you're not going to ever be happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And same thing with, with the girl that crushed you and broke your heart. Is that your fault? I mean, maybe, but maybe not, right? Maybe not. Maybe it is not your fault at all. But you know what? It's your responsibility to get yourself out of that place. And so all of it keeps coming back to, like, at first, not, just not looking outward for this change and looking out for like, oh, my parents are the reason. Like,
Yeah.
No, like, I mean, look, they did the best that they could. Did they fuck up? Maybe they did, but like, hey, it's not, you can't wait for them to fix it or to tell you that they're sorry for your change. It'll never happen. Or maybe it will, but like now you're just, you're grasping for hope, and hope is a horrible strategy. You're grasping for hope that somebody does something that then your life will be okay. And it's like, that's just not going to happen. And so there, discovering these underlying kind of belief systems is very, very, very powerful, right? And like, I like people to write stuff out because, look, reality is like you have to. I always say too, like there's some type of reward for continuing to live this way, right? Like for instance, if you live at home with your parents still and you're like 30, whatever, right? Like, and like there's a reward to that. What is it? It's safety. It's comfort, right? That's the reward. And then the question is, like, people are like, well, I want to change my life. It's like, well, you got to write this stuff out first. Like, what is the rewards that you're getting from eating a lot of food, or being around people that are not helping you do that? There's a reward for it.
Yeah. This is a survival pattern or of some sort.
Yeah, absolutely. But make that shit real. Don't hide from it. Don't lie. Like, hey, man, like when I, just eat at home and watch TV, I feel safe. I feel comfortable. Like the world can't hurt me. That might be the reward.
Yeah.
But then when you say it out loud, it's like, oh shit, like this is not who I want to be though. But you gotta face these facts, and that might be the fact. But it's very, very difficult to change, if you don't face those things. Now, when we go back to talking about casting votes, one of the big things that I think currently is the problem in any industry, but certainly when it comes to transformations, is the fact that we get down on ourselves. Then we get this spur of motivation, something that like, oh, I want to date that guy, but I don't feel like I look good enough. Or, hey, I can't even go on the beach and put my swim trunks on, the ones that I like, or take my shirt off, or whatever else maybe. You get this spur of motivation. And because, of course, we live in a very, very one-click buy on Amazon, get anything right away. You go to like, cool, all right, where's the fucking detox? I want to do this really aggressive plan because now I'm ready. Like I'm really, really ready to do this. And, psychology and physiology doesn't necessarily agree with those things the way that we'd want to. And so you get this burst, you start really hard, you realize how difficult it is to take on that much, and you fall off, and then you're like, oh, well, I'll wait for a better time. And then kind of this cycle of the rest pause mentality continues. And, and then we are where we are because like, here's a crazy, I don't know if you've heard of some of these data facts and stuff, but like, in the last 16, 17 years, like gym memberships have gone up, I think it's about 65%.
Yeah, it's on a huge rise in the US especially.
And this is just gym memberships, right?
Yeah.
Which are very, very unused, by the way. This doesn't count, the online space, which now there's more at-home workouts, more of this, more of that than you can ever imagine, right? More nutritional info, 1,000 diet books coming out every year. I mean, like obviously too much, drinking through fire holes of information. You actually don't even know what's going on. But through all this advancement in science, the things that we've discovered about fat loss, the things we've discovered about metabolic adaptation, and all these different things, in those last 17 years that we've seen this rise, right? Obesity's doubled. It went from 17 or 16% to 34%. Right. But women, here's another statistic. Women train 100% more. Men train 100% more than they did 16, 17 years ago. Actually train. Yeah. Women, I think it's like 60%. So we had a rise in gym memberships. We had a rise in people training, right? We have a rise of nutritional information. And we have had a incredibly drastic rise in obesity and reduction of every form of health, cardiovascular health, like I will say diseases that are related to behaviors that have just skyrocketed. And actually, those are the top causes of death are actually 3 out of 5 are things that we can control.
Yeah. Right? So stress is the number one that's tied to like all 5 of those leading causes of death.
Absolutely. And that is certainly one of the puzzle pieces that doesn't get talked about enough, that doesn't get brought to the forefront. It's certainly stress, lack of recovery, lack of sleep.
Yeah, just because you made the point about how someone like goes in hard, goes into this like program, and then they do end up in that excitement phase, seeking that external motivation, something outside of themselves, getting burnt out, and never even stepping into like the internal work, that discovery you were kind of talking about. So, yeah,
I mean, that's important, right? I mean, because these are the conversations that we're having all the time, right? I mean, I get clients to come in, and I mean, even people that have been with us for a long time. And, there's a frustration. It's like, but Luka, let's do a 4-week, 6-week thing, burst, whatever, right? Like, and there's a time and a place for that. I'm not saying that, but usually there's a underlying problem that keeps repeating itself.
Yeah.
Right. And that I want to get to that, I want people to face, just like, hey, in my own life, right? There's stuff that's underlying that I want to kind of peel the onion and face, because that's usually the catalyst for a breakthrough.
I think that's the key, though. You said, I want to. So it's like you're willing to do the work.
Absolutely. Now, and you've seen this, like one of, the 2 or 3 different questions that we ask is, when people come in and like, I want to do that, and I'm going to say like, hey, you mind if I ask you a question? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to achieve this goal? Right. And I did it with essentially my ex-wife's niece. So I just call her my niece, but and she said like, hey, I want to lose this many pounds, right? And my next thing was, well, how motivated are you to do that? And she was like, well, like a 7. I said, interesting. Well, what would get you to a 9 or 10, right? Because PN teaches this like ready, willing, able, right? So it's like, how motivated are you? How ready are you for this? And of course, my final question for any actionable step with any person in any area. So when I do, business coaching and marketing stuff, when we get to like, all right, here's the action plan. And a person's like, oh man, I'm really excited to get to start. Okay, cool. Hey, one more question. Now on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can do this, 90% of the time? And if it's a 9 or a 10, we'll go ahead. We'll move forward with it. If it's a 8 or below, they're not going to do it. So then the question is like, hey, what's going to help you get to 9 or 10? And maybe there's something there we can do. But a lot of times we're going to have to take the actions back, make them smaller, make them easier.
Yeah,
right?
Decrease the threat, decrease
just the difficulty, right?
Yeah.
Because until they say I'm a 9 or a 10, because this is one of the most proven studies, and from kids to adults, is that if a person doesn't have confidence that they will complete the task, they actually won't put as much effort into it. This is, tons of studies with kids. If the kids didn't think that they could, like, oh man, I'm just not good at math. What do? Well, they don't study math because they believe they're not good at it. It's like a fixed mindset. And because they don't study it, because they don't put the effort into it, they actually don't become good at math and they fail. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So I haven't looked into that research study, but here's what's fascinating. So I'm big on the language that I'm using with my son. He's 3, and it's interesting. If someone comes over and he knows certain things, like he can name practically any car on the planet at 3 years old. It's just mind blowing. And we'll be walking. We were this just with my dad recently, and I was like, "Hey, what's that?" And it was a Dodge Charger, and he knew it, and he was like, "It's a Mr. Stinky car," and he just like flipped. And it was because like for a moment, like maybe he didn't know or he didn't have that confidence. I'm not sure what it was, but I literally saw exactly what you're talking about in that moment with a 3-year-old, and so I was like, hey buddy, if you don't know the answer, you just can't remember, that's okay. That happens to all of us. So starting to retrain that, but it's ingrained in us, man. It's like just part of us.
Absolutely. So, you see it when you're older, right? Like, I don't know, in a space of, if you're known as an expert, right? I know I was there for a while, like where I had to know everything. And if I didn't know it, I was like, fuck, like, do I make shit up? Do I, go around the problem and pretend, because it's like just being like, oh man, I don't know that. Never heard of that. Right. Like now, I'm in a space where I know more than I've ever known. And yet I feel dumb as fuck. Like that's pretty much, right? Which is a good place. To me, it's a good place. Cause I just live in this constant, was a space of curiosity. But it is like, it's once again, because you're like, oh man, I'm going to be judged for being dumb. And, the research on fixed versus growth mindset, this is one, there's a great book, if you haven't read it especially if you have a kid. I'm this weird guy that like, I don't have kids yet. And I've read all these studies on child psychology, on every book about behavior change, and then like, I'm talking to my friends about like, oh, so what do you do with a kid? I'd have you consider. And they're like, who the fuck are you, dude? Like, what do you do?
Yeah,
like,
but you've had little kids.
Like, well, look, man,
little kids running around your facilities forever, man.
Hey, man, it's crazy. But there's a book called Nurture Shock. You know, it's 20 years of research on behaviors of children. And like, really, the book starts by saying, hey, you know, have you ever you meet your parents? You know, they're always like, they'll do something and parents have a conversation and like, well, I know what's best for my kid, you know. So the whole book is like, no, you actually don't, you know. You don't know what's best for your kid, and here's the science that proves it. And so you know, jokingly so, but really it does say like, hey, you know, we want what's best for our kids, but we are completely misguided by our experiences growing up, opinions, this, that, the other, and we're more, you know, we make more emotional decisions than we do logical and science-based stuff of what's better. So, you know, one of the things they talked about is like, you know, what do parents tell their kids all the time? Like, you're so smart, right? It's actually one of the worst things that you can do, because what tends to happen is they go like, oh, I'm smart. And then when a challenging problem arises that they can't solve, they go, fuck, I'm not smart. I can't, so I'm not going to do this problem at all, because I don't want to seem stupid. So I'm only going to solve the things that I can solve and seem smart. And this is a true kind of like definition of a fixed mindset, because what starts happening is that you will only push as far as the things that you can do, but you won't push further because you don't want to look like dumb, ugly, anything else. Whereas if you congratulate effort, right? Hey, Timmy, great effort on that puzzle. Way to like put an effort into doing that. See, now they start attaching effort to reward. And so those kids, and when they were solving puzzles, they did this test where, you know, they tell a whole group of kids like constantly as they were solving this puzzle that was solvable. It was a solvable puzzle. And they're telling them, great effort. The other ones, they were like, oh, you're so good at this. You're so smart. You're so talented, right? And then they gave them another puzzle, and it was an unsolvable puzzle. And what happened is that like the kids that were told that were really, really smart, they're talented, they quit so much sooner. Matter of fact, the kids that like that were told like that effort is, hey, great effort, they didn't even quit. Like, even as though the puzzle wasn't solvable, they just kept going, right? And because obviously those other kids were like, oh, well, like now I'm looking dumb. I can't look dumb, right? So fixed versus growth mindset. And this is something that happens, I mean, all over the place. You know, it happens everywhere. But this is why I'm such I would say, you know, somewhat obsessive about the study of the human mind, psychology, social sciences, pedagogy, you know, environments, and how they shape us. And, you know, we shape the environments shape us, and so on and so forth, right? And because there's so many blind spots. And to me, it's like bringing these blind spots out for people to where they can start recognizing them and truly dealing with the truth, right? That's key, because the tactical, and like, and I'm not saying like, look, you know, it's like nutrition. Nutrition coaching is very interesting to me, because I do it. Like, I always look at myself, I'm a coach of somebody that, you know, call it a body architect or whatever else you want to do. Like, my goal is just the result, right? And result is a sustainable change that people can maintain, that changes their life. And, you know, within that sustainable change, there's all these puzzle pieces. There's training, right? But then there's nutrition, then there's recovery, then there's lifestyle stuff. Hey, then there's like mindset around it, right? There's a lot of these puzzle pieces that come together. And, you know, I've never been, I always say, somebody said, well, what's your niche, Luka? And you know, because I'm not the shoulder guy or this guy or that guy. I've studied every single one of those people, and I feel like I know a lot of what they know, but I'll never be as good as them at it. But the one thing that I've, you know, prided myself on is putting those puzzle pieces together, because I feel like, you know, you could be the best at training, but then your sleep's fucked, you're constantly stressed out, you don't eat well, you know, you surround yourself with crappy people. Guess what? You won't be successful. You know, you're on point with nutrition, but you don't exercise, same thing, you're stressed out, your sleep's not on, you know. Once again, none of those things by itself is going to get you what you want. It's how you put them together, and how you get people to do that is the art and science of, like I said, behavior change. And there's a lot to that. And, you know, that's how I look at those puzzle pieces, and like discuss, like, to me, it's detective work, right? Nutrition coaching is really detective work. rather than like, hey, listen, man, just plug in these macros and hit this, and that.
Oh man.
Cool. Anybody can Google that and
Yeah.
find that out and do it. Not to say I have anything against calorie counting or macro tracking, none of that. Like it's a tool. Actually, I would say it's an awareness tool that I think is very beneficial, but you have to take it as an awareness tool versus like, this is a nutritional strategy. That's not true.
It's meeting the person at the right time, at the right place for them to use that tool, and then, and then pull them back. It's the awareness. It's the curiosity.
Correct. Because the detective work helps you find out what's wrong. Right. And then it's like, oh, okay, cool. Here's a couple of things going on. Which one of these do you feel like is the, autonomy, right? Like you want to proactively coach and get people to buy into and be like, this is my decision. That's what I want to change next. Okay, cool. Let's work on that. Right. And then you solve that and you make it consistent. And guess what? You go to the next thing. But there is no, that's why to me, like whether it's business, whether it's nutrition, like checklists are crazy to me. Right. Like all you got to do is, I'm like, man, if that shit was that easy, we would all be fucking amazing.
Right.
But it's not, because it's more like, boom, boom, boom. This is one person's path, right? The other person's is like this. It's completely different, right?
Yeah.
Because they're an individual and have their own desires and fears and struggles and obstacles and family and past and history and ingrained things. And, as a coach, like you just have to really, really, really be good at listening and discovering what's going on. And then of course, you do have to have a toolbox that's big. The bigger the toolbox, the better, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I said, that's a more important part of it, is this whole communication part of it, and just understanding how to help people do the stuff that sometimes, honestly, they know how to do. And, think about how many people, like right now, if we pick any person that, a person off the street, and we're like, hey, listen, man, what's something that you want to improve in your health and fitness? Like, oh man, I want to lose 40 pounds. Like I've really put on some weight over the years and my joints hurt and just my energy's low and I don't feel confident anymore. Okay, cool. Well, let's look at this. What do you think are some things that you could do to change, what you're doing? I guarantee you, they'll give you at least 2 or 3, like, well, I mean, it's, the snacking at night for sure. That's one of the things that, and probably I go drink out about 3 nights a week, right? They're going to give you 2 or 3 answers of knowing what you already do, right? Maybe they won't know everything, but they'll know the next step. Most people know the next step. Even if you're in business, like, the next step. How do I do it?
Right.
And that's the magic, right? Is helping people actually achieve it based on actual, science of psychology and science of neurology, like how does a human brain operate and what's the block, you know what I mean? Versus, hey, listen, you should probably have some more protein with that meal, which, look, a lot of people know that, right? A lot of people know that, but they don't do it. And it's just like how you get to do it. Like, that's where the magic happens. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. And so when you were talking about fixed mindset, what came to mind, and a little off course, but do you find that when people have more of that fixed mindset, that they tend to go towards making something complex, so that they can actually try and fail unconsciously? Does that make sense?
It's a possibility. I mean, like, look, our brain is like amazing, right? And there's always an underlying narrative, to go back to the belief systems. There's an underlying narrative that drives our life, right? And so it's very true. So I'll give you an example. All right, check this out. This is a great example because, you're sitting at home, somebody is trying to quit smoking. They don't have cigarettes at home, right? And they go like, oh man, I'm really hungry. I'm going to go to the store and get some food, right? They go to the store, they get some food, and they buy a pack of cigarettes. They go home and they smoke a cigarette. Did they go to the store to get some food, or was that the excuse so they could get some cigarettes? Right? Like that. And the thing is, but when the underlying narrative is, hey, listen, I'm stressed out. I need something to calm me down. I need a cigarette to calm me down. I go get a cigarette, right? Like, and obviously below that is, why am I smoking? Why am I stressed out? Right? There's all these different things. Yeah. So, a lot of times when the narrative is, I'm afraid to fail, I'm not good enough. Man, I'm really afraid of persecution, right? Because somewhere in the past I got hurt, persecuted, laughed at, embarrassed. I don't want to face that again. And if I go and do this thing, man, I might fail and get persecuted. So let me take on this really complex task, right? And right off the bat, you can go like, I did start that, but it was just so difficult, so challenging. It just didn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
We find all types of ways to, I would say, to support that narrative, right? So that's why, like, it's a two-way street, because narrative supports your behaviors, and your behaviors a lot of times end up supporting your narrative. Because people will say, well, what does that mean, Luka? Do I need to go to therapy and like dig in and write journal every day and figure out like what's going on before I make a change? And it's like, no, actually, you don't have to do that. I mean, those are things that will be helpful, but that might take some time. Like, changing your belief system is not a, hey, I'll do it by next Tuesday type of thing.
Yeah, we got however many years of neuron pathways that are just
exactly. Now, I will say, and I'm sure you're fine with me dabbling into this. Why is the rise of things like, I would say, psychedelic drugs?
Right.
And I hate, actually, you know what? I hate that I use the word drugs, medicine.
Yeah.
But even things like I said, MDMA and psilocybin, and other root plants, and why more and more people are going to do ayahuasca and things of that nature, because like, and once again, in a lot of states, psilocybin and MDMA right now are in actually in trial runs, so with therapists, to treat OCD, depression, anxiety,
right,
PTSD, and obviously, look, just so we're clear, like, if you look it all up, the success rates blow out of the water any drug that's on the market, by the way. Like, I mean, we're talking about like in 2-3x, ridiculous,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, why does that happen, right? And even though they're studying these mechanisms on a deeper level, the one thing that they're realizing that is, that these hallucinogenic, I would say, medicines or drugs, whatever you want to call them, they end up like almost resetting, especially higher doses, like resetting the amygdala a lot of times, which is, the I would say the part of the brain is looking for fear and, comparing things that happened to you in the past with situations that are going on now. It's always searching for threat. And, when you can reset that, like, you're kind of wiping out. It's almost like resetting your phone when it gets, like, I just reset my phone like 45 minutes ago because it's fucking doing dumb stuff. I'm like, I gotta reset this sucker. Boom, and all of a sudden, like, factory settings, and it's working clear. And so now, when you do something like that, you're able to now pattern in new things. And this is why things like when people go on, ayahuasca journey, and obviously it's very, very challenging for a lot of people. There's purging, and there's you're facing your demons and things like that. But on the other side, you find this high level consciousness, this bliss. But everybody will tell you, like, you don't change if you now with this reset, you have to ingrain and integrate these new behaviors. Otherwise, you're going to fall back into the pattern. Yeah. And, so there are faster ways. And I'm not here pitching this, by the way, even though, I've dabbled in some of this stuff. I find it fascinating. But, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that there are ways to, why people go to a Tony Robbins event, right? Like, and there's a whole new kind of like, holy shit, like this, wow, belief system, right? Now, a lot of people actually don't change because they go back to the same environment. They get pulled back into the same behaviors, and they just don't, integrate. But the reality is that, there is no one way to do it. Some people do it in a slower fashion. Some people have some trauma, shock, something that drives them to change. I mean, I'm sure you've had, in the gym where people come and they're ready, right? They're like, I just went through a divorce. I feel like shit. I've been living this, certain way. Like I put on weight. Like I'm not like there was this massive pain that triggered them to make a change, right? So there's no one way to do it, but either way, I almost, I'm in a way believe, just like with training, bottom up, top down. I'm going to work inside out, outside in. I don't care. I'm going to start working both of those ways. Like I'm going to start casting votes for who I want to become, right? And I'm going to start unraveling some hard truths, right? And it's just like, either way, I'm going to get to the root of it. And you know what? Sometimes in my life, there's been really like tragic stuff that happened. It made me change real quick, like start changing really fast. And there's been other things that it's taken me years to build and work through. And, it's getting better and better and better. And I'm still not there, right? And I think that the only thing that you can truly do is, be committed to becoming, who you want to become and changing that identity and making those behaviors a part of your life, little by little. And like I said, there's a whole, I got a bunch of notes too. And I'm sure you've read through a lot of habits book and a lot of research on it, but how to,
BJ Fogg, Charles Duhigg,
yep,
James
exactly.
Clear, all the guys. Yeah,
absolutely. And so, and that science is important, how to build good habits, how to break bad ones. And I think these are the conversations that I like to have with people, because, it's almost impossible to break a bad habit if you're in the wrong environment, right? It's crazy. It's like, it's essentially like, trying to lift, 1,000 pounds, but getting the result of lifting 50 pounds.
Yeah.
Right? Why would you do that? Like, it's crazy, right? And so, shifting the environment and whether that means removing the bad behavior further to make it harder to do is going to increase your success rate dramatically, right? Like if you don't have ice cream in the house, and you can, listen, you can still get it, but now you got to drive to the store for 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back.
Right.
Like, do I want this ice cream so bad that I need to drive 45 minutes?
Yeah.
And if you do, fucking go get the ice cream. But
right. Celebrate it.
Absolutely. But 9 out of 10 times you're not getting ice cream.
Yeah.
Where before you're getting it 9 out of 10 times because it's in your fridge.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with the good habit, right? Like, oh, you want to do 10 minutes of mobility? Cool. Listen, sleep in your shorts and have a yoga mat in front of your bed. The likelihood of you doing that is going to go up significantly. Or guess what? Meet your friend downstairs in a little like yoga spot. I'm telling you, you have now accountability, somebody that you've leveraged the relationship. You're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Or put it this way, it's way more likely that you're going to do it. Hey, invest in a coach. Guess what? Way more likely that you're going to do it, right? Yeah. So you gotta, I think that too many times, once again, kind of like the Nurture Shock book, right? Oh, well, I feel like I know what's best for my child, right? People are like, well, I know what's best for me. And I'm like, they actually do once you unravel stuff, right? But you got to understand the like, you know what I'm saying? I always tell people, like, listen, gravity, right? Like, look, it works, right? And if somebody goes like, well, no, it works. Like, you can't argue it. Like, gravity exists. It's there. You know what I mean? And if you don't believe it exists, let's go up on this 11-story building and like step off and see how confident you're about that. But there's also rules and like science of behavior change. So same thing, like, no, I really think, you know what? I'm going to do great hanging out with my 5 friends that don't give a shit about the same goals that I do and are self-destructive. And I'm still going to hang out with them, but I'm going to do all my stuff different, right? It's kind of like, it's possible that you could succeed, but it's definitely not probable. Your right. Odds in Vegas are really, really shitty.
Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't bet on that if you were in Vegas. So why do that? Why make things more difficult for yourself? And I think too, sometimes, we kind of live in this, and I've certainly been in that, like we live in this hustle, grind, mindset. And, that people go like, nah, man, I just gotta grind this out and hustle this out.
Yeah. Look, I think that's hard. There's some very influential, powerful, like people who are giving a wealth of content and knowledge. I mean, you look in, just in general, like you've got, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, or you got Gary Vaynerchuk, or you got Tom Bilyeu, like some powerful people. But then we tend to believe that may be the only way, but it may not fit our lifestyle or environment or any of these other factors.
And sometimes, and like, once again, like, because I'm not against it, I'm just like, be clear on the understanding, because I guarantee you, if you talk to a bunch of those people and you were able to interview them, like this, I guarantee you they probably have a lot of the same, like once you broke it down, the advice would be like, hey, start where you are.
Sure. They've got balance.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, but The Rock's doing it. Like, listen, like The Rock's been doing this shit for a long ass time. Like you gotta understand, like, if you ask him for where he came from and what he was doing and how he got there, he'd probably tell you about a ton of failures and then figuring it out and starting smaller. And man, this is just the way that it goes. And once again, everybody's different, because here's what happens. And like, this has been my favorite. James Clear talked about the vote system. I talk about the credits and debits in a bank account of self-esteem. And I think Dax was the first person that kind of brought it up to me. And I was like, oh man, I really, dig that analogy, and I think there's a lot of truth to it, where, every time you basically say you're going to do something and, you do it, you get a credit in your bank account. You know what I mean? And every time you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, you get a debit. And it's not even about what I say to you. It's about what I say to myself. Man, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning. I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk. Alarm rings. Oh, fuck, snooze. Now that's just a debit in your bank account of self-esteem, of self-confidence. And after a while, if you build up a lot of debits, right, you're bankrupt in self-esteem, bankrupt. Yeah. And what ends up happening is that you don't even believe yourself, right? And we talked about those votes. Now you're like, well, I'm not fucking, like, you know what? I don't take action. I'm lazy. Whatever the narrative starts becoming, I'm not, I don't have what it takes. And you start believing that, right? And the more you think about thoughts, thought repeats itself over and over and over. Thought becomes a habit becomes a belief system. You know what I mean? And so but if you build credits, right? If you say you're going to do something, you do it. Now you're starting to build credits, right? And if you build enough credits, and I feel like I'm at a point in life where I have a lot of credits in certain areas of my life. So even if I don't follow through on some stuff, it's not a big deal, because guess what? Like, I've done it a million times, right? Like, so I've got the self-esteem there. Okay. And the problem is, so if you think about this whole, well, how, people say, well, Luka, how do I go? Like, man, I'm so much in debt right now with my self-esteem. Like, how do I change that? Right. And this is a perfect example of going back to when you watch the hustle videos. And like, look, most people would be like, Luka, you're crazy. You work, like, you're a hustler, right? Like, and I'm like, sure, but let's break this down, okay? Because there's certain areas of my life that I struggle with, implementing new habits. And I do the same thing. And I take, I'll watch somebody I respect, and it's like, you just got to do it. You know what I mean? And it's like, all right, I'm just going to do it. And then I fail, and boom, there's another debit into my bank account in that self-esteem. Because, people are like, hustle, let's go. And so you get inspired and motivated, and then you try to take on too much. And then and then guess what? You fail, and boom, there's another debit. Instead of, like, why don't you take on very little, right? Because if you make it even, I like people to say, well, that seems easy. I'm like, cool, that should be no problem for you then to do this for the next 2 weeks, right? And they're like, yeah, how confident are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
1 to 10, all right, great, awesome, high five, let's go. Now, the
Yeah.
thing is, if that person really does do that thing, for 2 weeks, guess what they just did? They put a bunch of credits. Yeah. Now, smaller, but nonetheless, they're wins. They're building that, that self-esteem back up. And now, guess what? It's like, shit, I can do this stuff, man. Absolutely awesome. Like, hey, let's take on a little bit more, right? And all of a sudden, you can take on more and more and more. So like The Rock, the Gary V's, right? Those guys have a fucking, like, a really, really big credit that they can take from to take on bigger things, right? But guess what? You'll find very few, and of course, there's outliers. Somebody's always going to give you an example and shit. There's outliers. I'm not saying they're not, sometimes crazy trauma creates crazy fucking, like, focus and motivation, and that, what? I'm not against that. Like, I'm not saying to not, like, for instance, go for it. But you also have to recognize the truth in your patterns. And if you've been doing it a certain way for a long time and it's not working, science shows that this works better. And what works better is, like, taking on less and building that credit and building that self-esteem and fucking, like, then getting that momentum and snowball effect, where after a while, for sure, you can start taking on bigger chunks and bigger chunks and bigger chunks. And that to me has always been almost the greatest explanation of, hey, why is your self-confidence and self-esteem low? Besides, the narratives that we talked about. But remember, both ways, right? You either change your narrative,
yeah,
or which changes your behaviors most of the time, or you start changing your behaviors in a small way and gain confidence and wins to take on more, and that starts changing your narrative, right? It's a two-way street. It's kind of like breathing and stress. Breathing affects stress, stress affects breathing, right? Like, yeah, they're very intertwined.
Yeah. But either way, I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is, like, action is what precedes motivation, not the other way around. Instead of, we can grab some external motivation, but ultimately it's the action that's going to lead to us feeling successful if we're doing allowed a limit from wherever we're at to then actually become motivated by our own actions. And then it'll keep
for sure. No, for sure. And, like, people say, well, then do you not believe in like the power of words, the power of the mind, of what you tell you? I'm like, absolutely I do, man. Like I do, because once again, it's a two-way street. I mean, it sounds corny, but like I still have like every morning, like I have this pop-up says I am enough, right? Like I was writing it on a mirror, like I journal stuff, right? I mean, it's still there, right? And, if somebody ever comes in and does, like I do these crazy conditioning sessions some days, like where I do an hour prowler on a minute every minute, not recommended. It's like, I do it like maybe every 2-3 weeks, and it's more of a mental challenge for me than anything else. And I invite people to do stuff like that with me here and there, right?
One word comes to mind if I ever get that asshole. Don't invite me.
If you're in the area, you let me know. I will change my schedule up, my friend. But it's the kicker is like, so, because I'm like this, right? Most people will stick with me for like first 12 rounds, 15 rounds, whatever. Maybe even beat me, right? But then like around 16, 18, most people start just, I mean, it can start getting bad if you don't have, I would say, very good aerobic base, and my mitochondria hasn't adapted to certain things. So, you get to around 20, people are like, holy shit, right? But the thing is, and they'll see me talking to myself, and like they go like, dude, what are you saying, right? And I'm like, dude, I just tell my, like, I'm just saying like every weird, I mean, not weird thing, but like I'm the champion, like I'm unstoppable, like this is nothing, like I can keep going forever. And like I lose my marbles a little bit, but I do the same thing whether I'm there by myself or whether somebody's there. I'm just repeating the things that I would do anyways.
You're taking me back to like SEAL Fit, where like, we started off with like 60 something of us, and then we were down to like 20 of us, and I'm just sitting there smiling. It's the only thing I could do to keep myself from breaking was
and the thing is like,
through the pain.
Because what I'm doing is when, I go like, do you not find it hard? I'm like, no. Like when you see me talking to myself, that's where like I'm changing the narrative from, you don't need to do this, just whatever, you do it another day, to, hey, listen, dude, like, this is really fucking hard. Like, man, is that your muscle wanting to explode? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just like, no, like this is, I tell myself a story. I wrote a post a while ago and I said, hey, don't listen to yourself, talk to yourself. And, because your internal editor pops up all over the place. You know what I mean? Like when you're writing, like this isn't, editor, this isn't good enough. Dude, what do you know about this? Like, you're not a writer, right? Or when you're training, like, it's like, dude, you can quit. You can do it another day. Like you work hard enough already, Or, I mean, there's editors there all the time. By the way, what you hear is the train going right by the building, which I thoroughly enjoy, but sometimes it can do this and you can't hear it. But
it's all good.
And so that's the don't listen to yourself, but talk to yourself. But talk to yourself is like, hey man, listen, I'm becoming the greatest writer ever. Hey, this challenge right here, this is the catalyst. This is when people break. I will not break. I'm unstoppable. Almost like nobody's working as hard as me, right? I'm talking to myself. And, people think that's some type of game or play, but it's like I've, through basketball and through my professional athlete career, that was something I did a lot of. It's like the visualization, the talking to myself, the writings. I mean, even like tattoos. For me, tattoos were like, that's why the whole Vigor gym, it has, powerful images and it has quotes. And it's like, you might be like, oh, it's cool. But like, I watch that, I read that, I let it marinate, and that becomes, that starts changing my narrative. My environment is changing my narrative. And that's where, it goes both ways. To read positive things, read things about people that went through a struggle and overcame it, right? Guess what it does? It makes you go like, man, this guy had it even worse than I had it. Holy shit, but he made it happen. Man, maybe I can make it happen too, right? You don't even, sometimes, I always say, you don't have to, if you have a belief system and that belief system is holding you back, you don't even need to just shift the belief system, right? It's really hard to do. I tell people, hey, listen, how about this? Suspend the disbelief. How about that? Suspend disbelief about this. That maybe, just maybe, it's possible, right? And you put a little kind of like seed of doubt in their current belief and plant a seed of I would say, fruition about another belief that was a lot more empowering. Because my whole thing is like, man, this is the shit that everybody should be asking themselves when they start talking. Like, well, Luka, you don't understand. Like, this, I come from here, and my whole family, they're all big bone. And I said, let me ask you something. You mind if I ask you something? No, go ahead. Okay, cool. Tell me, like, how is that belief serving you? Like what you just told me, how is that serving your goals? And most people are like, what do you mean? I'm saying, like, you just told me a belief system that you have. How is that helping you achieve your goals? People will get stuck. Like, well, I don't know. I guess it's not helping me achieve my goals. I'm like, okay, so if it's not helping you be who you want to become, why would you invest in that belief? If it's not serving you, like, why have it? Right? Like it's like anything else, like racism or hatred, or like, how is that serving you right now?
Yeah.
You said you wanted to be this person and be this way and this loving and compat. Like, how is that belief helping you achieve this? And you know, that's where people start like having to be like, shit, it's not. Oh shit, like it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
you're literally bringing awareness to a whole new level for them so that they can have that curiosity you were talking about themselves. And then hopefully on the other end, I mean, I'm kind of looking at it as like there's awareness on one side for you to change, for you to make a big shift. But on the other side, it's like appreciation for what you can do, for where you're at. And that's the only way that inner line of like action is going to be able to kind of solidify and ingrain as you build those neuron pathways with that self-talk you were kind of talking about to get to that positive place.
Absolutely. And it's like throughout the day, man, if you look at one day, right, like there's things that you do, say, hear, feel, or around, put in your mouth that like literally create who you are, right? It's it. Like if you broke down your day and said, I get up at this time, I press the snooze button, and here's the thing too, like everybody's different, right? I used to go to sleep at, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and get up at 4:45, 5, right? Highly unrecommended for humanity, right? I believe that's what I needed to do. It did get me ahead. It was also not healthy for me. Now like I'm a night owl. I get up later, and the thing is, you know what I don't care about? Like, I don't care about the guy saying that I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Like, if you want to do that, that's cool, man. That's great. Cause some people are larks and they go to sleep earlier, they get up earlier, and fantastic. Me, like, man, I'm sleeping in 7:30, 8 o'clock a lot of times. If I go to, some nights I'm like on a roll and writing and whatever, might go to sleep at 3, guess what? I need my sleep. I might get up at 9:30, you know what I mean? And I can do that now, obviously, because of the way that, I have a team and things of that nature. So what I'm not saying is, that like everyone is different. And, the book, Why We Sleep, actually explains this very, very well, that, genetically, some people are night owls from thousands of generations of, what tended to happen. I'm geeky, so I'm going to share the story.
You're part of that 10% that's the night owls.
It's actually, the number is bigger than that. It's
really?
Bigger. Yeah. So, what people didn't realize that, like, as we were, through tens of thousands of years of these tribes living together in caves, and what would happen is some part of the tribe would go to sleep earlier, right? Maybe, I don't know, at 9, and they'd get up at like 4 or 5, or 3 or 4, and then they would split shifts because, for not to get attacked by another tribe, by wild animals, and so on and so forth. Now, when you're doing that, right, through thousands of years, you have an adjustment in your DNA. So there's a number of people that are genetically predisposed to legitimately these rhythms, circadian rhythms, and are truly night owls. And I for sure am one of those. I mean, I look back 25 years and I'm like, man, as a kid, I would be going to sleep at like 2, It's just the way it has been. Now I got up earlier when I had to because of, basketball practice or school or running my own business, like having to run a 5:30 class. But I was never at my best at those times. And literally now research is actually showing this. And they're saying that the way that businesses are ran are very, very counterintuitive, like they're detrimental to night owls, right? And now somewhat it's changing because businesses now are like, hey, come in later, work later, right? Yeah. They're adapting, they're adjusting. But for the longest time, it was like, oh man, you're just lazy. And like, trust me, like I can get up in the morning, but it's not a pleasant thing for me, right? But guess what? People are like, Jesus Christ, I can't stay up. I'm like 3 o'clock in the morning. I can be like, whoa, what you want to do? Let's go lift, whatever, And so what, I wanted to bring that in full circle because I think there's just like the hustle, there's this misunderstanding of, the top performers like don't sleep a lot, but actually they do. A lot of misconceptions. And I'll be the first person to tell you, like, sometimes in your life, you got to go through shit. You got to hustle. You got to work 3 jobs. You got to sleep 3-4 hours a night. Fuck it. You do that. But with the mindset of intent of like, hey, I want to get out of this because I'll actually perform better and be clearer and get better work done and be a more enjoyable person to be around if I do get my sleep. So, these are all things that we have to understand about individuals and science to better kind of formulate a path that's going to work. But, to get back to that, like, you look at a day of the time you get up to the time you go to sleep, the every behavior that you're part of, every thought that you give power to in your head, the food you put in, the person you're around, the movies that you watch, the podcasts you listen to, the books that you read, the places that you go, like, they shape who you are as a person. And assessing that is pretty much like the key to change, right? To go take take your whole day, the average day that you live, and go, holy crap, like, man, I get up, I eat a donut, I drink coffee, I run out the door, I'm stressed, I'm late to work, I work in a place I hate, I talk shit about others a lot because I'm so stressed out. And you know what I mean? And you start going like, okay, wow, man, like, this is only going to lead into a worse place. It's not going to work. So what is the one thing that I can change right now and like really put effort in changing that's going to make my day better? Maybe that's like, hey, the morning, my morning 20-30 minutes, put myself in a better place and power, and start the morning better and roll over better. Maybe get a 10-minute workout in, maybe go for a walk, maybe do this, that, the other. I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk about that are the habits, and there's a million. I mean, people can shift them the way, whoever they want to. But I think the start is just going like, hey, all these things, like, I'm building myself up as a person. And
casting those votes.
Yeah, casting those votes. And sure, like, hey, maybe this guy's, I play ball, and like, I'm not tall for basketball, right? And it's easy to go like, well, that guy is 6'5", so he's got an advantage and shit. Like, I'll never be like him, right? So yeah, like, for basketball, that person has better, genetics than I do. Okay, but that doesn't, like, one of my favorite quotes in life has been, you can't choose your potential, but you can choose to fulfill it. Yeah. And we all will not ever fulfill our true potential. But man, if we can push that boundary as much as possible, as far as how great a person we are as a human, how we treat others, how we, do things that inspire us, our physical body. And once again, like, hey, you don't want to be Usain Bolt, that's cool. Like, but hey, who do you want to be as far when it comes to physical power and your body and the way you look and feel? And hey, you don't want to have a 6-pack? That's cool. Like, most people don't. It's okay. Like, that's fine, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's this crazy thing that everybody needs to be a model in a magazine. A lot of those guys are miserable. So it's, but you have to be true to yourself and go like, hey, let me, like, this is the identity I want to create. And it's like, you have optimal, like, let's say you have death, optimal health. Like, everybody's somewhere in between these lines. And all you can do, is kind of like just inch away towards this optimal health, which probably you never reach it. But the journey to it is what makes you fulfilled. Yeah. And Tony Robbins said, like, hey, let me give you one word that will make you happy. And the word is progress, right? Like, you progress in life in different areas, like, you will always feel good about it. Like, I've gone through some of my, and I'm very open. Like, man, I'm struggling with, like, we're struggling with some stuff in certain businesses right now. But it's like, man, I've had a gym business for 13 years, if you count Slovenia. I've had a consulting business for going on 7 years, essentially. I've had a real estate business for at least 5 now. In this building now for 2 and a half, 3. It's like, guess what? Like, man, sometimes the external factors are going to create adversity. And economy drops, recession, this, that, the other. People do weird shit. Your own personal kind of like faults create a bottleneck in your business. And all you can do, like, even in the hardest times, when you feel like you're progressing, I feel good about it, right? Like, it's like, sometimes I've had crazy shit happen, and it's like, there's this trauma, but then when I work towards getting better and I'm progressing, I feel good. Actually better than sometimes where everything's going like gravy, you know what I mean? Like, and I kind of just get complacent, and it's just flatline, and I'm like, oh, look, bank account's great, like, this is awesome. But something inside of me just like, man, like, I just feel unfulfilled. Like, I don't, and that's also, for entrepreneurs, like, too, like, sometimes that's the time when people like just burn everything to the ground or like fuck things up just so that they can, work and progress again. Right. And so it's this interesting conundrum. But, I feel like, success, there's two definitions of success that I love, because I get this all the time. It's like this really in the ether thing, right? Like, what is success? and two, like, John Wooden taught me one thing about success is like, man, success is you putting in your absolute best effort every single day, right? You're doing things to the best of your ability, the things that matter, that are meaningful to the best of your ability. If you do that, you're successful. And he actually was a person, and he's been a huge influence in me in coaching leadership. Obviously never met the person, but through his books and through every single thing that I've studied about him, is that, John Wooden, if they won a game and he didn't feel like they put in the best effort and executed because of effort and focus, he was upset. He was upset. But if they lost the game and they put in their best effort, he was actually very satisfied. He was happy with it.
Yeah.
And that was like mind-boggling to me, because the reality is that sometimes you could do your absolute best and you'll lose. At least you'll lose the battle, right? You'll lose the battle. But living that life, you'll win the war, right? And so that has been one definition and one mindset around success that I certainly have grasped. The other one is that success comes from the word succession. And succession really just means progress, right? And so it's the next step. It's like growing, it's expanding, and that means progress. And it goes back to the same thing that Tony Robbins said, progress equals happiness. Certainly some of it for sure. And, if you can go and look at stuff and just be a little bit better all the time, man, over 2 to 3 years, you're going to be fucking a lot better, and I was talking to Berardi, like he said this very, very interesting thing, which I actually, once I thought about it, I was like, man, like, you know what, you're absolutely right. And he said, people believe that things are harder than they really are, right? Most people actually make things out to be harder than they are, but they drastically underestimate how long it will take, right? And so that to me was like, absolutely. It's like, people ask about business and it's like, hey, listen, man, like, it's the little thing, like coach your ass off, really care about people, right? Like create a great customer experience, and then when you got that dialed in, like, hey, now maybe, create value for the marketplace, like, but little by little, like little things, like focus on these little, like not these, hey, listen, dude, you got to write a blog a week and do a podcast a week and you got to do this, and you get that, oh my God, that's fucking hard, right? It's like, no, start here, small, like, don't make it that hard. It's actually not that hard. But guess what? You know how you think it's going to take you a year? It's actually going to be like 7. You know what I mean? Like, right, you know how you're going to get that transformation with your 8-week detox? Yeah, it's going to be like a year and a half. You know what I mean? For you to get there and be able to stick it, right? Like, and so if people get that in itself, because so much of happiness is also attached around to expectation. And have you read the book Soul for Happy?
No, I'm writing it down.
Mo Gaudat. So Mogawdat, Mo Gaudat. And he's a super high level engineer at Google, like very, very successful person. And amazing story. His son passed away through an emergency surgery. It was completely unexpected. And it kind of flipped his world around. And he started really, he said, man, all the books on happiness were very out in the ether. I'm an engineer. I need to understand it in formulas, right? Like he needs to see it like that. I love the book. I've been going through the book over and over again. And he said, here's the formula for happiness. If your reality matches or exceeds your expectations, you're happy, right? But if it falls below it, you're unhappy. So what do we do? I mean, right now in this world of nonstop social media, nonstop, like, this is who you should be, this is what you should have. Your expectation becomes, well, I got to have a 6-pack fast, right? And I got to get them a Ferrari, like the guy in the IG story that has the fucking Ferrari that he's got the crossed arms again. And then I also, need to have the hottest, like, and of course, now you're setting these expectations and you're chasing this horizon. And every day is like, I'm unhappy because my expectation is not matching or exceeding life. My life is not matching or exceeding expectations. And so, but when I get there, now I shall be happy.
Right.
And so you create this actual I would say, formula that literally fucks your life up, even though, once you get to, I don't know, 10 million or 100 grand or whatever the number is, like, you want more, right? And the thing is, there's nothing that is wrong with wanting more, okay? But you have to love and appreciate everything you got.
Yeah.
I mean, until you don't love and appreciate the things you got, man, it's hard to get more and to really care about that and to be fulfilled by it. And so,
that and to not sabotage too. To not sabotage. I mean, even on the weight loss spectrum, worked with a lady for a number of years, lost 50 pounds, and then had to move away, like, just because of job stuff. And, we did a check-in like 2 months later, and she's like, oh, I'm really struggling. And I'm like, all right, just get back to the simple stuff that you were doing. Like, let's dial in, let's check in periodically, right? A year goes by, we do another check-in, and she's like, I've gained most of it back. And she was like, and I remember back then, all I was thinking when I lost that 50 was like, I got to lose 10 more. I'm so unhappy with myself because I need to lose that 10 more. And she's like, now I would do anything to get back there. And I'm realizing that I need to just appreciate where I'm at now, and I'll get there. And so it's the exact same thing you're talking about. Appreciate where you're at.
Absolutely, man. Because once again, like, the journey. So think about this, like, how there's certain things that are so profound, right? Like, and I remind myself this because it is, like, for me, for everybody, for you, like, I'm sure you deal with it, right? Like, even when I try to stay around people and be as grounded as I can, read books to be grounded, be in mentorships to be grounded. But honestly, like, there's always this pull of, because we do live in a world of social media. And I mean, I was just down in Miami, with Krebs, and because he's living down there now, and I love visiting. I probably would not live there because I know myself, you know what I mean? But it's like, hey, you come out in that certain area. I mean, and it's funny because Seattle has a lot of money, right? There's a lot of, it's one of the wealthiest cities in America. But, you'll see more Subarus and Teslas and Priuses. Like, you come down to Miami, fucking, it's like Rolls Royces, Lamborghinis, and just, like, flash, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it. And so, that environment automatically makes you start being like, man, maybe I got to work harder to be able to get the Lamborghini, because then, like, right? It's like, and then you're like, hold the fuck up. What are you doing?
that comparison pattern that wants to just run you. Yeah.
It's like it's hitting you, right? Like, and so you have to do the work to, to stay focused and grounded and understand what matters and focus on what matters. The relationship, like the meaningful work that you do, your health, your body, your temple, your experiences that you have with people that you love, right? Like contribution, like these, competence, improving competence, contribution, connection, like those things that really, really matter. And it's hard. Like, it is hard because, once again, it's really easy for me to go like, oh man, I gotta have that. Now, I always say, like, dude, whose life is better? Okay, if you look at 10-year period, and I'll take business as an example, but you have this person that starts here, and it's like he wants to get to like $30 million, right, in his business or whatever, and he's grinding and hustling. He's like, I gotta get to 30. Like, everything is like, when I get there, man, for that 10 years, right? Like, he's chopping away at it, fucking like crushing everything around him. His health is crappy. He's just so zoned in and forgets about everything else in life. And he gets to that 30 million, right? And it's like, yeah, motherfuckers, I got 30 million. So everybody told me that I couldn't do it. I got to do it, right? And I can relate to this because I was very driven towards this significance and like, I'll show you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now you got this other person that, has got this 10 years, kind of gap. And he's like, just working to be the best. And he's setting some markers and goals along the way. Just like loving what he does, working his ass off to be the best that he can be in that craft, but also enjoying it as much as possible. Now, does he have adversity? Absolutely. Does he struggle, pain? Absolutely. But he keeps coming back and going like, hey, let me enjoy this experience. Let me share it with the people I love. Let me give to my team. Let me be a better leader. Right? Like, and at the end, he only makes $1 million, right? Who won in that game of life? Because for those 10 years, the joy and the experiences and the progress and the appreciation of everything, for that person, he's got 10 years of that. This person has 10 years of fucking just, I would say, anger and rage and, and whatever. And he gets to this other point, right? So, and me and Morty were talking about this. Like, there's no happy ending to an unhappy journey. And that would sum up those two different scenarios, right? This unhappy journey and gets you to this thing that you think that matters. Like, look, I went into Warrior because I messed up a lot of things in my life, got divorced, this, that, the other, right? Like, and for me, I can remember to this day, where on my bank account, I had like, you know, I was born in Yugoslavia in 81, communism, socialism, right? And at that point in time, like I'm driving a really nice Mercedes and and everything. Like I could look at my bank account and go like, hey man, I made it, right? That bullshit. But like I woke up one day, you know, it was like probably about a year and a half, 2 years after my divorce, and like going through a lot of shame and guilt and, you know, being a workaholic and flying to Vegas and, you know, partying my ass off, taking drugs, whatever, right? Like, and I woke up and I can feel it when I got out of bed, and I was like, is this it? I'm completely empty, right? I'm empty. And, you know, that drove me to obviously go and find the truth and rip myself open and look at a lot of pain. And it was the catalyst for, you know, who I am today. And it obviously took time and a lot of work and a lot of pain, but, you know, and it's not like I'm perfect or something, but like, man, that was something that changed me. But it was that whole process of like, I went through, you know, and it wasn't like the 10 years before was completely unhappy. That's not true. But it was a pure insight of what happens that, like, you know, if you're chasing that thing and like you're not really grateful and appreciated for everything you have and care for the things that matter most in life, you know, that you will, like, you know, the universe will slap you and will show you what's real. Now, to me, I'm always like, hey, why wait for that to happen where you can put yourself in positions and environments around people, coaches, mentors that will guide you to avoid a lot of life's mistakes. Now, you're not going to avoid all of them. That's not how it works. But your life is too short to make all the mistakes, right? It's too short to make all the mistakes. That's why I'll read a book and I'm like, oh shit, what an insight. Let me start implementing that, because like, man, that's from a person that has done this for 40 years, has been really successful, and he's telling me all the stuff that he messed up on. Let me learn from that. Like, hey, my mentor, he brought something up and he said, hey, be careful. I'd have you consider doing it this way, right? And like, maybe I should listen to him, right? Because there's people I can tell you, like, and I coach them, it takes a while sometimes, and I'm like, hey, you hired me to help you, guide you, and you keep going back to your narrative, and we can see the result of that. Maybe you should listen. Because you don't have the time to make all the mistakes. That's what, you know what I mean? And so those are powerful things, man, because it, you know, there is, and this is cliche, it's very cliche, and I can't remember the name of the book and the girl that wrote the book, who was a nurse for the last 12 months of people's lives. And it was like, you know, what are the 5 biggest regrets you have? You know, and it was all these things that were like, man, I wish I wouldn't have been influenced by other people, by who I'm with and what am I doing. I wish I didn't work as much, right? These are the biggest regrets. I wish I would have took chances, right? Like, and not stayed as safe, right? Like, and you think about that and you go like, man, and most people, you know, they regretted the things that they didn't do more than the things that they did. Yep. Nobody went like, oh, I really regret doing that and then fucking it up, right? So it's like, it gives you, like, if she spent like time with hundreds and hundreds of people and all of the people gave the same 5 things, man, why not look at those right now and say, hey, you know, right now, if I die today, I'd have those same regrets. Maybe I should start shifting, you know, things around a little bit more. Maybe maybe I should talk to people that are very, very successful, you know, and whatever success means. Like, you know, maybe that's a money thing, maybe that's a this thing, maybe it's a that thing, and find out a little bit about the ones that have money, but hey, more so than that, like, they're happier, like, they're fulfilled people, they have healthy families and relationships and love in life, and yeah, find out what they're doing so that I can do more of that, and not just look at the guy that's got like a lot of, you know, wealth and money or whatever else it is, but are miserable, you know. And so if success leaves clues and we want to create this identity, why don't we find identities that are, and mirror identities that we want to create? For me, that's huge one is, you know, philanthropy and giving back to my local community, creating something that, you know, stays behind me, you know, and like just fulfilled work. Like, you know, the process of becoming the best coach in the world, which is what you know, that's my goal. Will I ever get there? I don't know. But it's just the process of it is what makes me happy, and it makes me fulfilled. And I have something, this North Star to go towards. And hey, how can I lead my team to be the best that they can possibly be, right? Like, man, and that's really things to shoot for versus, you know, having this thing, because then this thing will tell the world that you're enough, that you made it, and that, you know, you can You can be in the ballpark with everybody else that's awesome, right? Like, so just, and once again, like we kind of create a full circle, a full loop and go back to, hey, the truth. What is the truth, man? What is the truth for you? Like, what do you care about? What do you love? Like, what makes your soul sing? You know what I'm saying? Like, and, man, what was this quote? It said, most people have a job that's too small for their soul. Ooh. Right. And I was like, oh, well, I can't remember who said it. Like, I was like, oh, man, you got way more potential in your soul. You know what I mean? Like, fucking squeeze it out, man. Like, squeeze it out. And like, you won't regret it. Even through failures and adversity and through struggle, you won't regret it, because that is the definition of a life of quiet desperation, right? Life of quiet desperation, living like just a voice that's like, dude, you can do more, you can be more. But it's not. But these are not. Let's listen. These are very different. Okay, those are two very different things than I'm not enough. Okay,
right.
Much different. It's like, hey, go and fulfill your potential of everything. How much you love, how much you give, how much you create. You know what I mean? Like how much, I would say how much value you bring to the world, how much experiences you create for people that you love. Because those are the things that are fulfilling. How good you become at your craft, right? That's what it is. That's the filling that job for the soul up versus like, I'm not enough. Let me be more narcissistic and get more stuff to show other people. So this is two different worlds.
Yeah.
Right? And fulfill
knowing the power and the impact.
Yeah.
So beautiful, dude. We could go down so many rabbit holes and probably talk about all this stuff for like months on end, just going back and forth on books. But
when I have caffeine in my hand, and what's going on.
It's always good. Get that bang. But yeah, the before I ask my last question, I just kind of want to recap on where people can find you best or whatever it is you're doing. I mean, you talked about a little bit about like the Vigor life building, and I did find it, just side note, fascinating that you used a lot of the quotes that literally like shape the world of the Vigor life building, which is a phenomenal facility. Like, do the work. You mentioned that. To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. Rise as one. I mean, I remember stepping foot in there when like, I was like, I don't think he's going to be able to turn this into this. Like, it was before you, when you were doing construction, and then to see what it is now and stuff. So just where can they find information on the Vigor life building or you or what you're doing? What's a good place?
The main site, which we're renovating, but the gym site is vigorgroundfitness.com, VIGORGROUND fitness.com. That's kind of like, all the blogs go on there, the podcasts go on there. But you can also find my podcast on iTunes. It's called the Vigor Life Podcast, VIGOR Life Podcast. And really, like, honestly, it's just like an extension of my coaching. It's gotten, what's been cool is that I've never thought about like, hey, do you want to monetize this or anything like that? That was never the goal. It was just like, hey, how can I share more of the stuff that like I think about every day? I coach my team on. I honestly is relevant to me, things like lessons like that. And it's just, it's just grown a lot and it's been awesome, man. So you can find a lot of more of my rantings and honestly teachings there. But otherwise I do a lot of fitness content and content on mindset and coaching and thought processes like that on my Instagram, which is just Luka Hocevar, LukaHocevar, and also on the Facebook Vigor Ground page, which is just Vigor Ground Fitness and Performance. If you plug that into Facebook, you can find us there. I mean, we literally do daily videos, mobility training, nutritional articles. Like right now, we're doing a lot of nutritional articles that are coming out. And like I said, I always love feedback. I mean, to me, it's like I do it for the people, and I love getting feedback on what, because these conversations I love are great because we kind of go where we go and where my mind's at with this stuff. And then what tends to happen is, people will reach out and say, hey, I love, this, like, can you go deeper into that? And that's, I mean, like I said, it's like detective work, right? Like you never know what's going to trigger, what's going to be the thing. And that's how I love working with people is like, let's go down this, like, let's find a solution. Let's move forward, So on any other platforms, I'm very, even though it's kind of getting a little crazier and it's growing, but like I try to answer everybody. And I certainly read everything. So if you send things you love, requests, things that you'd like to hear more about, I'll definitely take note and put out more content around it. So I always appreciate that.
For sure, man. We'll link all that stuff up in the show notes. That is a podcast that should be on a must for everybody. And it doesn't matter if you're in the fitness space, nutrition space, business space. There's a reason you put the word life in there, because it's very much life lessons. So anybody listening, definitely get on that for sure. So last question, man. Like, there's someone on the other end of this that just needs a specific message for them. We don't know what it is, who it is, why they're listening, what they're trying to get out of it, but they need that one tangible thing that is somehow sitting at the forefront of your mind. Is going to come to you right now on what it takes for them to truly transform. So fire away with whatever comes to mind.
Make a decision. I mean, what I mean by that is that, like, every single day there's something that's going to trigger you in some type of way, you know, and when it triggers you in a positive way, or sometimes it's painful because it's a realization that you got to do something. Right then and there, make a decision, and every decision should be connected to an action. You know, the way that looks for instance, I always say it in podcasts, like, what was something that you wrote down a note, or something you heard that resonated with you? Okay, act on that today, right now. Like, don't wait. Like, literally, is it a book? Okay, buy it on Amazon. Okay, did you, man, like, following up with clients, or, you know, writing a cert, start doing it right now. You might not be able to finish it, but take action on the thing that you decided on right then and there, because that in itself builds. If you did that, like, and I tell people, like, hey, look, after you listen to the Vigor Life podcast, take one action right then and there. Decide and take the action. Now, worst case scenario, if you do that every week, listening to it, you'll take 52 actions in a year based on that. And guess what? 52 actions in a year is going to build, guess what? Credits in the bank account of self-esteem of taking action on something that you care about. And that's how shit works. And so, you know, because everything else can be like it can be motivational, be inspirational, but it's very in the ether sometimes, right? Like, your North Star and this, that, the other. But like, hey, how about, like, when you read a book and something hits you, and you know when it does, man, you know when you watch a motivational video and you watch an interview with somebody that was like overcame something, and it just makes you, like, you feel it in your gut, you feel it in your heart, and you're like, oh my God, man, right then and there, use that, make a decision and do something. Make a reservation to go to date night with your girlfriend or your wife. You know what I mean? Like, hey, hire a marketing company because you don't have anybody that's like running anything for you, but you know you need leads, whatever, right? Like, do something, like, decide, take action. And it doesn't have to be big. It could be small, right? Write a thank you note to somebody that did something for you. And you've been meaning to say it, but maybe you just haven't. Just stop there. Stop the podcast. Stop the fucking thing. Boom. Like, do it. Guess what? As soon as you do it, man, there's going to be a feeling of like, okay. You know what I mean? And that feeling starts, like, now ingraining this neural pathway of, when I do stuff, I feel good. Dopamine response.
Right.
You know, you start doing that over and over and over. Now, instead of the dopamine response coming from that cookie, or the dopamine response coming from, you know, bullshitting somebody so they give you acknowledgement or whatever else, now you're creating a new drug. And the drug is, you know, feel something meaningful, decide, take action on it, and move forward. Progress, happiness, succession. And the thing is, and like I said, no matter how big or small, don't think that because it's like, you know what, I'm going to text my friend I haven't texted in a long time. Hey, man, miss you. I know we haven't talked for a long time, but you are in my thoughts. Love you. Appreciate you, man. Boom. Took you like literally 20 seconds. You know how good that's going to make that person feel? And I guarantee you it's going to make you feel good, right? Do small stuff, but fucking do it, man. Decide, take action. Bam, that's it. So after you just heard me say that, do something.
Boom. There you have it. Luka, appreciate it so much, my friend.
My pleasure, my brother. It was great. Love it.
All right, my friend, that concludes another great episode. And I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for going on this journey with me, going down this path as you and I continue to explore and uncover the truth of what it takes to completely transform. And now you've got two assignments. And the first one is it's really important that you take action on one thing that you heard from today's message. It's important to take the education with a little bit of implementation so that you can yield the results to go from good to great, to go from ordinary to extraordinary, to go from your everyday norm to a place where you can completely transform. And the second thing that I need you to do is share this message, because there's a friend, a coworker, a loved one out there that needs to hear a piece of this. And it's what they are waiting for to help them radically shift the way that they've been living life and start to explore their true potential, for them to get unstuck. And so I need you to screenshot this, tag me on social media, or share or write a review or whatever it is you know is going to get this message out to the right person at the right time so that they can live the best life possible. Because that's our goal. That is our goal. You and me, to be able to share the best messages that we possibly can and impact a great number of lives. So as always, I appreciate you. Coach Joseph Hawthorne, Truth of Transformation. Peace be the journey.